with the world demonstrating against racial discrimination. This time I've selected one of my poems that is based on my experiences at school. And it was back in 1948 when I first started school at a small country town in central New South Wales. When I look back on those days, there's one teacher that always comes to mind. His name was Mr. Harradine, and he taught us in 4th class. To him, the Greek kids from the CAF were not wogs. The Aboriginal kids weren't black, and the white kids weren't white. We were all children in his class, there to learn. Boondee's mob. 30 years had drifted by since I left my hometown. The main street hadn't changed that much. Some shops had been closed down. Outside the bank, beneath the tree, the bench seat still remained. The Royal Mailbox, painted red, was sealed but well maintained. On the bench, an old bloke sat, newspaper across his knee. His looks were sharp, his clothes were neat, his eyes stared straight at me. "I know you, lad," the old man said. "From days I taught at school. You're one of those who opted out. I thought you were a fool." "It's Big Ben," came a voice behind. "We called him Ding Dong then. I sat with him in 4th class, sir. Remember? Ding Dong Ben. His dad and mine were army mates. His mum was damn good too. When times were tough, we camped with them. It's them that helped us through." He took my hand. His face was black. His hair was silver grey. His check shirt held 2 pens, just right. His RMs cleaned that day. His eyes gleamed. He shook my hand as proud could be. "He's Harradine, our teacher, Ben. And remember, I'm Boondee." I was only 12 when I left that school and ran away to hide. It was years of fun and years of grog that landed me inside. When I got out from Bathurst jail, old Harradine was there. He drove me to his place, Ben, and settled my despair. A trucking job he found for me. I took it in my stride, and now I own 7 trucks, Boondee said with pride. "Sit down, you boys," old Harradine said. "I'll remind you of the day I started at the school up there and learnt this small town's way. Boondee's mob, the Kalari kids. There were a lot at school, in clothes dumped at the edge of town that white kids ridicule. The dirt track ran to their humpy camp out on Nagura Bend. No power, no water, no dunnies. To whites it did offend. The river ran by in times of flood. They camped on Reservoir Hill. No water, no power. The ground was shale. There's sheets of iron there still. Nagura camp was 2 miles out. Those kids must go to school, but not the mobs beyond 5 mile. That was the government rule. The white kids rode the blue school bus that came in from miles away. That bus was only for white kids then. The mob walked all the way. White kids sat at desks. Some Boondee sat on the floor. Their legs were crossed to hold their books in which they learnt to draw. For morning tea, milk was served from cans placed neath the tree. Whites served first. enamel mugs, glass jars for most Boondees. If they reached year 6 and still at school, Boondees had to clean the yard. That job was way too hot for whites. The work was too damn hard. But white kids who mucked up in class and drove the teachers mad cleaned inkwells till their hands went black. Black was seen as bad. For Anzac Day, the school was taught to march the stone playground, but only those in uniform were allowed to march through town. 'Twas a concrete pool down near the bridge where white kids learnt to swim. It was a river bank between the logs where Boondee's mob dived in. Some of Boondee's mob learnt fast, like white kids at bush schools. But when it came to sport, the mob made white kids look like fools. When they left, they drifted away to the west and far beyond. Most in the town or at the school didn't know they'd even gone. Some stayed here in this white man's town to become domestic hands, barred from pubs, shunned in shops, left at taxi stands. At the movie house, their tickets sold through a hole in the lane side wall for wooden seats under the screen. Not allowed upstairs at all. Sly grog was sold in flagons then from behind the old Royal pub. They sat and drank it beneath the bridge or somewhere in the scrub. The green Dodge the policeman drove had a mesh crate round the tray. This held the mob they said were drunk. They were always on display. 'Twas the 70s, Ben, old Harradine said. He picked up his paper to go. They got their flag, the tent embassy. Still, acceptance is very slow. Most thought it a shame they were allowed to camp upon that lawn. We're still judged by the colour of skin and the place where we were born. I remember those days, old Harradine told. Those days when all seemed right. That's the way we thought of life back then. It was seen as black and white. The Harradine type who took the time to learn the Kalari way in western towns was oh so rare. And I think it's the same today. When I left that bench where Harradine sat, 'twas Boondee on my mind. His strength came from Kalari blood, his culture, not decline. We all could learn from Kalari ways, the way they treated this land, if we acknowledge the past, our prejudiced ways, and just try to understand.